Hey there! Welcome to another one of my videos in my project series where I show you how to build an entire project from start to finish. In this project, we're going to be building this website. Let's take a look at it. So it's a very simple website with a white background, but it has 3 different buttons on it. If you click the buttons, you change the color of the website. Simple website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that changes the background color. Now, of course, you can also make the windows smaller, and you'll see that on mobile, they stack on top of each other. Now, this is a video where I want to show you the entire process from start to finish in building this project. So in this video, I'm not going to go into detail about how HTML, CSS, and JavaScript works. I hope that you already know the basics of those 3 technologies. This video is more to take you through the entire process on building a project. So with that, if you're ready, let's start building this thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up Figma because I want to sketch out my idea that I have in my brain so that I have something to work with. So let me open up Figma. Figma is a design tool, and if you've never worked with Figma before, I think it's one of the best tools ever invented. Check out my video on Figma if you're new to that. But I have my Figma desktop app open here, and I'm going to open up a new, let me just make it full screen, open up a new project. I'm just going to start with a blank canvas. There we go. Okay, so what is the thing that I want to build? So I wanted to build a fairly simple website that teaches you the very basics of HTML, CSS, of course, but mostly JavaScript. And I'm calling it a color changing website. Basically, what I'm thinking is that it's going to be a website that's going to have a couple of buttons with the name of a color on it. And when you press it, it changes the background color of the website that it's on. So before I start even coding it, I want to make a sketch or make a couple of sketches to have something that I can go off of. And Figma is perfect for that. So let me change this name to color changing website. And I'm going to go up here and start with a frame. I'm going to use a desktop frame. Like that. Okay, perfect. Now, the website's gonna have just simple buttons on there. So let me go up here and choose the shape tools and choose a rectangle. Let's go and make a big button right here. I'm gonna put it right in the middle somewhere. There we go. And I'm going to use the text tool and say which color it's going to go on there. So let me move myself a little bit to the left here so you can see what I'm doing on this tool section. So I'm going to go and make it larger. There we go. Maybe even a little bit larger than that. 64, that should be good. Okay, first button is going to be a red button. And then I want to go here and I want to make it rounded corners. Just, you know, when you have rectangles, usually when you have rounded corners, it just looks nicer to the human eye for some reason. So I'm going to add 10 pixels to the border radius. Okay, and then I'm going to choose a color here, which is going to be a nice red color. Let's go with something like this maybe. There we go. So that's the first button, and I'm going to choose this and group it together. So we can do Command G or Control G if you're on Windows. And also you can just right click and group or ungroup. And on the left side here, we already have a group now. I'm going to call this red, like this one. And let me just duplicate this 2 times. There we go. And there we have it. And then let me change this to blue and change this one, this one to red, blue, and green is the last one I want. Actually, I'll do red, green, blue, RGB. So let's see here. This one, I'm going to go inside here, double click, and then I'm going to change this to green. put this again in the middle, change this to a nice green color. There we are. And then let's go in here, change this to blue and put it right in the middle. There we are. And let's change this to a blue color. Might want to go with a font color that's white, but it's okay for now. So there we have it. Now it's pretty clear how I'm going to code it because I have a sketch of it now. So before I start coding it though, I want to make sure that I have a couple more sketches. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and then I'm going to duplicate this. Let me put it a little bit on the left side. So let me go here. And when we click on one of the buttons, I'm going to change the background color to that color. So let me go down here, copy this, go here, and then let me change the fill color to that red. There we go. Oops, don't want that. And then similarly for green and blue. Okay, so it's pretty clear to me how I'm going to be coding this thing. But before I do that, I also want to make sure that it looks nice on mobile. So I'm going to open up a frame here and go to phone. And then let me choose maybe iPhone. Yeah, let's go with iPhone Pro, 11 Pro. Put it right here. And basically, when you're going from desktop to mobile, in this case, it's pretty easy because, you know, the buttons are already stacked on top of each other. So it's going to be the same thing. But if they were put right next to each other, then you would just stack the buttons on top of each other on mobile. That's kind of the general thought process there, or rather system. So let me just copy this, and I'm going to just duplicate this and put it right under here. And let me just, let's go here and let's pick these and make them, pick all of them, make them a little bit smaller, or rather smaller like this. There we have it. And of course I want to go in and fix up the font size. Let's see. There we go. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because we're gonna fix it up in the coding itself. All I need right now is just the idea sketched down. So let me go here again, put it right in the middle, and then for blue as well, I'll put that middle like that. There we go. Okay, looking pretty good. So it's pretty clear to me now how I'm going to code this. So I'm going to now open up my code editor. Now, you can go ahead and use VS Code or any other coding environment that you feel comfortable with. I usually use Repl.it whenever I'm teaching coding, so I'm going to be using Repl.it. So let me go to Repl.it and log in. If you're not familiar with Repl.it, check out my video on how to use Repl.it. I think it's the easiest way to get started coding because you don't need to download anything. Everything is in the browser, and they have basically templates for everything. So whether you want to code Python, a website in Python, or just a simple HTML website, they have you covered. So I'm going to go and open up a new project, and let me choose HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Color changing website is what I'm going to call it. And let me actually move myself back to the right side. There we go. Let's give it a second to load. There we are. Perfect. So the first thing I'm going to do is set it up so that it's you can view this code in the best possible way while I'm coding. So if you're following along, So I'm going to open up this on the right side. This is where you'll see a preview of the website. So let me just make sure that it's working by writing a hello world tag. Okay, awesome. I'm going to open it up in a new tab so I can preview my website here. And then I'll go back here and I'll hide this away. Oh, oops. There we go. And then I'm gonna make it a little bit larger, and I'm gonna just zoom in here. I'm gonna zoom in like so. There we go. Okay, so if you're following along using some other coding environment, just copy this code. This is the code that comes with every new REPL related to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, just some boilerplate HTML that it gives you to get started. Now, two other things that it gives you are a JavaScript file, which is completely blank, which is connected to the index page right here. And then it's the CSS file, which is also blank, but is also referenced in the main index file. So whatever you write in these things are going to be, brought in to the main index page. So let me just go in here and get started coding. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is create those buttons that we wanted. So let's see, let me open up the Figma here. We wanted 3 buttons that were on top of each other. Okay, so let's see. Let me get rid of this hello world. And I'm going to be using, let me start with a div tag. Let's do div, and then let's do red, like this. And then let's do red, green, and blue. Okay, we have the first step done. Let's now give them a class of button. And let me just copy that and paste it in for each of these. And now I'm going to go to my CSS and create a class called button. Now, button, let me just give it a background color of something. This is going to be the general class that's going to style each button, and then we can color them with different things with another class or an ID later. So let me try something here with nice, maybe aquamarine. Never tried that before. So let's see how that looks. Refresh that. Okay. Now I want to do, of course, I want to have it much larger. So let's increase the font size to something like 40 pixels. And then we want to do, let's go back and see in our Figma sketch what it is that we wanted here. So the text itself is in the middle, and then there's a lot of space on the left and right, and the top and bottom as well. And that's, of course, called padding in CSS. So let's give it some padding. And then, of course, we also have the border radius. So it's, slight kind of curve there. Let's go back here and add those things. So let's add a padding of something like 30 pixels or so to begin with. And then we wanted to do text align center. And yeah, let's just try that out now. Okay, much better already. So one thing that I'm seeing here is that we need to have some spacing between the buttons, right? If we go here and we see there is some spacing here, that's going to be margin. So let's add some margin to each of the buttons. Let's do margin, and let's try 20 pixels. Now, when you put margin like this, just one number, it's going to just make it for all 4 different sides the same. If you wanted to give different ones, you could literally write out different ones for each of the different sides here. So, but I'm just gonna keep it at 20 for now because I want it to look the same for each side. There we go. Okay, that's much better. Now, let's add some border radius. Let me add 10 pixels to that. Let's do that and refresh. Okay, awesome. Now, one thing that I'm seeing here is that the buttons are way too wide. They're as wide as the page, basically, with the margin at the end. So I want to make the maximum width of the buttons smaller. So let me see here how wide they are. What's the width here? I can see it up here, 653. So let me try 600. Let's see. So let's do max width 600 pixels. Now, why are we doing max width and not width? Is because if, let's say that you're on a different display, like a phone or something like that, then if you just put it width, then it's going to be the same width regardless of the screen. But if you put max width, then it could be less than the max width. That's why I prefer to use max width in this case. Let's go back here, refresh. All right, looking pretty good now. Now I want to put this in the center. Not only do I want to put it in the center, but I also want to put it in the center of the both vertically and horizontally. So that's basically what I'm trying to say here. But push it down to the center here. Now this is something that can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So now I'm going to be using Google, which is my trusty companion, to search up how I would actually go about doing something like that. And this is something that you do as a developer all the time. If you don't know what to do, how to do something, you just use Google, right? And there's so many things that you could know, like the specific syntax for the code is hard to remember all of those things. So I'm going to use that now. So let's open up a new tab and write something like, so what am I really trying to do? I'm trying to center something in the middle. So let me start there. How to center a div in how to center a div. Let's just start with that. Okay, so I got a bunch of different things here. W3 Schools is usually a very good resource that I like, so I'm going to go with them now. So let me open that up right now. And it says horizontal and vertical align. Okay, this is perfect. This is what I want. Let's see here what they're saying. Saying center align items, center a block item using margin auto. Okay. Center align text. This is for text align. Center an image. Center and right align using position. Center align using float. So there's a lot of different strategies here. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. And then we have, let's see, vertically align. I'm not really liking all the ways here. Flexbox is a good way to do it. So here, let's try this. Let's look at this rather. Center vertically. You can also use Flexbox. Just note that Flexbox is not supported in that. Okay, so some browsers might not support it. So here's what I'm going to try to do. And this is what you do all the time. I'm going to copy this text. I'm going to implement it into my project. So what they have here is this piece of code right here, which is a CSS class. It says .center. I'm just going to copy that thing. So let me copy this thing and then go to my CSS file. So I'm already in my CSS file. I'm going to paste it right underneath button here. So I don't necessarily have to understand everything that's written here. Let me try to make it work. So this is a class that presumably, whichever thing that you apply it to, it's going to be centered. So let me see if that works or not. Let's go to the index file. And what is it that I want to center? Well, I actually want to center all three of my buttons. So I'm going to put those three divs into its own parent div, which I'm going to put the center class on. So let's go in here. I'll say div class center. Oops, center like that. And then let me select all of this code, put a tab there so I can indent that, and then div /div at the end there. There we go. Let's see if that works. Refresh this. It didn't quite work right now, but it we haven't gotten to the final place. where we want to be, but it did get us some of the way there, right? So this actually gives me a new idea. Maybe it would be nicer if on a desktop, because it's a much bigger screen, that we would have the three buttons lined up next to each other and not stacked. This gives me a new idea. You know what? I might like this better. So I might now go into my Figma sketch and change this slightly and do something like this. Let me make this smaller. And you know what? I want to actually make this so I can easily edit this later. So I'm going to get rid of these buttons again. I'm going to go in here and put this in the middle and then see how that looks instead. You know what? I think this looks better. So I'm going to change that now. I'm going to change all of those buttons to right next to each other right now. And I'm not even going to bother putting in green and blue here because I know that I'm going to be doing that, right? I just want the kind of the structure of the page from this. So let's go here. Let's go back to Google Chrome. So they are next to each other, which is good, but they're not in the center of the page right here. But they are in the center of this this block, which has a little green border. How about we can use that to center it in the middle of the entire page? Let's dig deeper into the code we copied to see how we can maybe do that. So let's go in here and let's go to the CSS file. Let's put it right here. Okay, so here I'm using display flex, and then I'm using justify content center and align item center. Here's what I'm thinking. These things probably have something to do with centering the things, the div that I have. That's what I'm thinking. I might not know exactly, but this height is going to be the height of the box that they're in, right? And this is the border. And so if I change this to red, for example, I'm thinking that this should change to red. Let's try that. Indeed it did. Okay, so we got a little border here. We don't want to have that border. I don't want that border on my page, so we can easily remove that. But it's helpful to see with that border because it shows you how big the box is. Here's what I'm thinking. The height is 200 pixels. Let's change that to 500 pixels. Refresh. Okay, now I get it. It looks like however large the box is, the three buttons are going to be in the center of the box. Okay. So how about, is there a way to set a height so that the height is automatically the height of the window that you are viewing the website on? Yes, there is. There is a way to do that. Let me show you how. Let's go in here and let's do 100 VH. This is a way you can do that. Let's refresh that. And there you go. See? Now, the problem is that there's a little bit of a scrolling bar that I get because it's a little bit too big, basically. This is because of the way, HTML and CSS works, that it adds a little bit of a border margin that you have out here. So in order to fix that, we can just go down a little bit on 100 to like 98 or so. Still, there's a little bit of a scroll bar. Let's maybe do 95. Let's see, refresh again. Okay, so 95 is good, but maybe we can do even 96. Refresh. Okay, 96 is also good. Maybe even do 97. There we go. Okay, 97 works. Now, for some reason, it might be a slightly different number for you, but that is working for me now. So now let me try to make it smaller and bigger, and there we go. This is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted to be, for those buttons to be exactly in the center. This is working amazingly. Now, of course, when we make the window smaller here, because it's it's going to be on a phone and everything, we want them to be stacked on top of each other, but we don't need to worry about that right now. Let's make it work on desktop and then go on to making it work on mobile as well. So with that done, I'm going to go here. I'm going to take away this border. and then refresh again. There we are. Perfect. Okay, so now I have these buttons. Now these buttons are looking fine, but they are of different widths, right? I want it to be the same width for every single button, regardless of the text inside of it. Let me go inside of here, and for the button here, let's change this one to width. Just width. And it's okay if we have width here because we're going to be changing it for mobile displays, right? So we don't have to worry about max width for now. And let's maybe change this to 500. Then refresh that. Okay, there we go. That is looking good. Let me, it's a little bit too large. 300, that's looking much better. Okay, so this is looking pretty good now. Now, I've got the class for each button done. I like this. But I do, of course, want each of these buttons to have the actual color that is written on the button. So for that, I'm going to be using IDs. Now, IDs, of course, in CSS is a way to uniquely identify a button, or rather a tag. So whereas you can have the same class on several of the divs, if you're using ID, you can only use it once. It has to be unique. So I'm going to go in here and add an ID and then call this red. And then this one I'm going to do green. And then this one I'm going to do blue. There we go. Let's go to the CSS file. And then let's create those. So ID, of course, is going to be a hashtag instead of a dot. I'm going to do red. And then I'm just going to do background color red like that. Let's see how that looks. Refresh. Okay, quite nice. And then let me just copy this, paste it 2 more times, and then do green and blue. Now for now, I'm just going to keep these colors, these. Now, of course, out of the box, CSS knows that if you're just writing green, it's going to give you the greenest of the green, you can say. It's going to be a specific green. If you want it to be different, which I do want, you can change that. You can give it the exact hex code, but I'm not going to bother with that just yet. I'm gonna come to that later. So let's refresh this, and now we got this. Okay, very nice. Now, is there anything else that I want on the CSS part end of things before I go into the JavaScript and I actually make this website functional? Yes, I do. Check this out. If I hover over on a button, there is no response. What I want is the button to become a little bit larger, and then when you go out of it, it goes back to its original size. Kind of a hover effect. That really makes it much better, because then you know for sure that you are on that button before you click it. So again, I'm going to use Google to search up the exact syntax that I need for this thing. So let's see here. What am I trying to search for? How to scale div in CSS. And then I'll also add a keyword animation. Let's see what that gives us. Okay, let's see here. So these things, the first 2 results are a little bit old. They're from 2014, so it might be outdated code. I do want to generally look for things that are more recent. So I'm gonna go to this third one. Let's see here. It says scale on hover with transition. This it looks like exactly what is that I need. Now, this website should have been a little bit better of showing the example in HTML and CSS so that you can see what you get. But let me try these. So I'm gonna copy this code and then go back to my CSS file. And then paste it in. Okay, so it looks like we have one grow class where there is a piece of code that says that there should be a transition when something is changing. And then there's the hover here, which is, when you when you have the regular div and then you hover over, you can have some other CSS acting on it while you're hovering. And what it's doing here is that it's going to be scaling it up. Looks like 10%. So the way that I want to implement it into my own code is just copy this part, copy that, and then go to the button. So I'm going to attach that to the button. And then here, I'm going to take this, copy that, and then I'm going to create another one right after button. Call it button:hover. Put curly brackets in, and then paste that right in there. I think that should work. And of course, I'm going to remove this for now. I don't need that. Let's see if that works. Refresh. Okay. Moment of truth. Hover, and it works. Awesome. This is looking pretty good now. Okay. So one more thing, though, I just realized is when you're hovering over, on the text, it gives me that, this cursor icon that's like I can select something, and then here it just gives me that. You know how when you hover over, you get that this hand icon? That's what I want to again help the user, like this indeed is something that you can click on. So I'm gonna go here and say, again, I want to do it on hover, and I want to do cursor and pointer, I believe it is. Refresh. And there we have it. Great. Now I'm happy. And I can always change this later if I want to. So now I'm ready to go into the JavaScript part of this whole project. So let's see here. Let's go to index. Let me close these up here. So with JavaScript, I want a way to run some JavaScript when I do click on one of these buttons, right? Now, if you're using Google Chrome, you have the developer tools, right? So let me show you on the page itself. If you're using Chrome, you can right click and you can do inspect element. It's going to give you this entire, you can basically go into the website and look at the code. You can change some things. You can do all of that stuff. Now, what I want to do is when I click on the button, I want to change the background color. Let me show you by opening up the console on the left side. So there's a JavaScript console that you can go to by pressing on console. And here you can write in stuff that can basically change the website. So let's write in document here. And when you write that, you'll see on the left side that it highlights the entire page. Basically, any website, everything that goes into the website is the document object. So let me show you here. If I press on this now and press enter, it's going to give me back this thing, and I hover over, it gives me the entire thing. If I go in here, you'll see that there's a lot of code in here. In fact, this is all the code that we have on our website. It's the exact same thing. It's all in here. So what if I went into this part of the website? You see, if I went into this part of the website, I see the exact that button. What if I went in here and I right clicked, or rather I just double clicked, and I said something like orange. Here you can see you can actually go into the website and you can change it using these developer tools. And let me change it back to red. And let me go to the console now again, or I am actually on the console already. So what I want to do is try to write some JavaScript that changes something on the website. So let me try document. And then I want to do, what do I want to do? I want to do body, because that's the body of the website, right? I can go in here and I can say this thing right here. So if I press enter on that, I can go in here and this is what this gives me back. That's all the stuff inside of the body. Okay. Now, if I could go inside of here and change the background color of the body, that would get me what I want. So let me try here, document, body, and then I'm going to go into style. And then under style, I got a whole bunch of things here. Let me see if I can find something that I like. Background color, that's what I want. So I'm going to go in here, and then I'm going to press enter. It gives me just an empty string right here. Why is that? Well, it's because by default, it gives you nothing, which is white, because white is the default. But what if I took this again? Rather, I can just press the up arrow. It's going to give me what I just wrote before. And then I said equal to something else, like, for example, red, in quotation marks, of course. That changes the website background color to red, which is exactly what I want, right? So I'm going to use this thing in my code to actually do it, not by writing it out like this in the console, because, who wants to do that? I want this thing to run when I press the button, the red button. So I'm going to copy this code, and I'm going to go back to my code. And in here, I'm going to say on click. So it's the easiest way to, make some JavaScript JavaScript code execute using an HTML tag. So I'm going to go here, and I'll say in here, and inside I'll say color change. Or rather, change color. Change color is a better name for that function. So I'm going to write now a function that's going to actually change it to red. That's the first step. So let's go back to script.js, and then let's do function color change. Rather, change color is what I want. I wrote it the same way again. Change color. Okay, curly brackets in here. And what is it that I want to happen when this function is executed? Well, what we just found out here through the console. We can just copy and paste this text, and we already have it copied. So I'm going to go in here and paste that in. So let me go in here now and try to run this website. Preview, and I'm going to close the developer tools for now. Don't need it right now. Let's press red, and it changed it to red. Awesome. We're actually pretty close to being done now with the JavaScript part. Now, does it work with green and blue? Not yet. Very easily, we can make it work with that too. And in fact, if you're watching this and you've come this far, you might want to just pause the video here and try to implement this by yourself, knowing how to change it to red, change it to green and blue. Let me go ahead and do it myself. So in here, I want to do on click and then change color. Now, if I run the exact same function, it's going to change it to red, which is not what I want. But you might notice here that there's a set of brackets. And the way that functions work is that you can have a function that just runs the same code every time you execute it. But functions can also take in inputs or arguments. And those arguments are things that you can put inside of here, which if you feed the function with some of these inputs, it can actually give you something different depending on that. And this is a perfect function to do that with, because what if we fed the function on the red button with the string, the piece of text that is called just red? Let's try that. Let's put it in here. And when you're using quotes here, you want to use single quotes in here because you already use double quotes here. If you use double quotes again, it might get confused, right? So just keep it to single quotes inside of this, inside of the double quotes. So I'm going to change that to red. I'm going to put this in. I'm going to put green here, and I'm going to copy this, do it one more time for blue. I'm going to put this thing blue in here. Okay. Let's now go back to script. All right. So in order to get that information in that we just fed it, red, green, and blue, we need to actually put in the name for that argument. So let's call it color. Now inside of the function, what we can do is that instead of just changing it to red every time, we can change it literally to color, right? And this is going to be either red, green, or blue. So let's just write that as color. And now let's go here and refresh. Let's try. So red, green, and blue. Awesome. We got it. There you go. Now, this is where I wanna change it up a little bit, because these colors are not the best. They're even hurting my eyes a little bit. So I want nicer shades of these colors, basically. So I'm going to go back to my Figma sketch and get it from there. So let me see if I can, let me use this sketch for that. So let's go back to having just a white page here. And then let's go in here and let's go to the color selection. And let's do a little bit of this type of shade of red. And then let's do a little darker shade of green maybe. And then blue, maybe go a little bit lighter actually. Yeah, that's looking good. So for all three of these colors, there's going to be the color representation in hex that I'm going to copy from Figma to my code in Repl.it. Let's just start with red. Let's go with this, copy that. And then let me, how do I want to do this? So let me start with the CSS. And I'm gonna say, I'm gonna do it here first. So let me do hashtag and paste. There we go. That's the red. And then I want to do the same with green. There we go. And of course with blue. Hashtag and blue. Awesome. Let's go here and refresh. All right, that is looking pretty good. Now, of course, if I press these buttons, there's still going to be the buttons that we have in the HTML code. So we're going to change those too. So let me copy this. And what we can do is inside of the JavaScript code, this could be, red and whatever, but it also takes in hex. So if I put it like this, and I would want to put it into inside of quotation marks, then it's still going to work. So let's do the same thing of instead of feeding the buttons, the strings red, green, and blue, let's just feed it this. So let's go back and just change it to color, and we'll go to here. And we'll change this to this one. And then green is this. And then blue. There we go. Okay, so refresh on that, and then let's do red, green, and blue. Perfect. And there we go. So there we have almost all of it working. One last thing that I want to do with this is that I want to make sure that if you're looking at this from a mobile device, it still looks good. Because right now, if you make this thing smaller, you'll see that if it is on a smaller, or rather narrower display, it's still gonna make the buttons appear next to each other. I want them to be stacked when you have that. All right, so what I want to do now, actually first, something that's bugging me is that I still have this title set to the default Repl.it. I want to change it to let's change it to colors. refresh that, and that should change that thing up here. Very nice. Now, the way that you would write some CSS code that makes it so that when you're on a mobile display, something else happens, and when you're on a different display, something else happens, is by using something called media queries. So let me show you how that works. Let's open up this and let's do media queries CSS. Okay, so let's look into W3 Schools and what they're telling us about it. Media query is a CSS technique introduced in CSS 3. Okay, it uses the media include, blah, 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 only if a certain condition is true. Okay, so let's see. If the browser window is 600 pixels or smaller, the background color will be light blue. This is exactly what we need. So let's copy this and use it in our code. When I go down a little bit, it says for mobile phones, it uses this one right here. So this can be different for you. You just go with something that you want here, but I'm going to just go with what they're saying here, and I'm going to use 768 pixels as the breaking point. So let's copy this, go in here, and let's go into CSS. Let me write that down here. Okay, so let's actually just check this if this works. So refresh this now, and then if I'm making the window smaller, there it is. So see, it changes it there. So what we want is that when this is changing, and let's keep the background color as it is right now so it's easier for us to test, we want these buttons to be stacked instead of written out, in the same row. So again, how exactly would I do that? Let's use Google. So let's see here. So we're using Flexbox, right? And let's do stack vertically on mobile. Okay. Flex, let me just scroll down a little bit here. And we got this one here. Okay, so this is interesting. This is called flex direction. So I'm assuming that flex direction is referring to which direction do you want to display the divs inside of, this way or this way. So that might be something interesting. Let's go in here. Let's see here. So the flex direction property accepts 4 different values: row, row reverse, column, and column reverse. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. So let me try this then. So I'm gonna actually try just running through these. So inside of here, what is it that I want to change? So we have the center div, which is the parent div, which contains all the buttons inside of it, right? And so that is the one that has this display flex. So let's try it with that. Let's go in here and let's target the center class. And then inside, let's say flex direction. And let's start with row. So now something should happen when we make the window smaller. Refresh. Or maybe something doesn't happen because it will be the same direction as we have it right now. Let's see. Nothing happens. So that's the same thing as we have. That's the default value. That makes sense. Let's go in here and let's try row reverse. Row reverse. Refresh this now. So I'm thinking now that probably is going to reverse the thing. So blue is first and red is last. Yep, that's exactly what it did. It flipped those, and then let's start with column. So this, I'm thinking, is what should give us what we're after. So let's make it smaller. And there you go. It stacks it So, you know, row you got this way and column you got this way. That makes sense. So this is exactly what we were after. And what I wanted, though, one thing that I forgot is that I didn't want it to be 600 pixels. I wanted it to be 768, I believe it was, on that website. So let's now refresh it again, and then now it just should stack much before that. There we are. Awesome, great. Now let's remove this light blue color. Don't need that, so we can take this entire thing away. And refresh. Take those out, and there you have it. Let's try it one last time. Let's test it out. Everything is working. Red gives us red, green, and blue. And if we make it smaller, it stacks up and it is still working. And if you'd like, you can try it out actually on your phone. All you would need to do is go to this unique URL which was generated, and you know it should work for you on the phone as well. And that is it. We are done with the project. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. Also, if you're interested in more videos like this, subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of other stuff. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching.